happening, gang? It's your boy Retro back again with another reaction video. Yeah. Today we're gonna be taking a look at a clip of Candace Owens absolutely ripping Bill Maher to shreds, or Bill Maher. I think that's how you pronounce it. Bill Maher, the comedian, absolutely gets owned for having TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, and it's very bad. I feel like we haven't checked out Candace in a while. Definitely love Candace's takes. I feel like she calls the balls and the strikes very well. So we're gonna hop straight into it and see exactly what's going on there and why Candace had to dismantle him. This video coming from Liberal Hive Mind. So big shouts to Liberal Hive Mind. Make sure you guys go show them some love. Also make sure you guys hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, guys. We're on the road to the truth. Hop aboard for the journey. Let's get into it.
What an absolute treat the month of October has been. You know, we haven't seen too much of Candace Owens as of late. Of course, she does her segments for the Daily Wire, and she did the Black Lives Matter investigative documentary recently, but we haven't seen much of a sort of media tour from Candace in a while. One-on-one debates, discussions, interviews, and of course, showing up on college campuses, causing young leftist brains to implode. But it seems like Candace is back in full force. I think all of 2022, I made one Candace Owens video. Well, just in the last, let's say, 30 days, I think I've done at least 4. And here's another, as Candace Owens takes on Bill Maher, or probably a better way to describe it is Bill Maher continues to show us his awful, and I mean real awful, case of TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. I want to show you guys their interaction, of course, have a little conversation about it. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so let's just play a little small part of their conversation, specifically when Trump was brought up. Because, of course, as we know, that's when Bill Maher loses his sense of reality.
I mean, that's pretty amazing for a guy who's, you know, probably going to be convicted for what he should be convicted for. And I'm sure we agree on this, Candace.
Definitely sure we agree on this.
About, you know, trying to overthrow the government of the United States.
You're just not, like, you're not a weak enough person to really, like, I don't buy this. I think you dance this way because you think you have to placate.
Okay, first of all,
no chance. Just
you
think
educate
that we almost lost America on January 6th. Like, I just don't buy that you're that soft.
Yeah, I do. And just to educate you a little on this, I was saying this for 5 years when everyone was laughing at me for saying this, that Trump would never concede the election and he would never go away. I was all alone on a raft.
But I mean, you saw BLM riots, right?
Yeah.
The summer leading up to this, right? Where, like, I lived in DC at this time, where you couldn't go outside, cars were flipped, things were burned, people were boarding up their windows. Yeah. But you thought the end of democracy, you can say this meaningfully in space, happened when people above the age of like 65 stormed the Capitol. You thought that was the worst thing you've ever seen in American politics.
Well, I mean, what was the worst thing? That was a small part of a bigger picture. The worst thing was that finally we had a president, after all this history that we've had, nobody ever did this, not Al Gore and not Nixon, who probably didn't actually lose their elections. They allowed this peaceful transfer of power to happen. We finally had a guy who decided, of course, because he's insane, decided that no matter what happens, I won this election. There's only 2 things that could possibly happen. I win the election, or if I don't win the election, there must have been some cheating. It was looked at by his own people around him, including the Homeland Security Department, including the Director of National Intelligence, including every court, federal and state, including his own lawyers, his daughter, Bill Barr. Everybody told him, you lost this election. They looked at this over and over again. Even the Republican vote counters, like the one he called who said, find me 11,000 more votes. Even those people told him. So plainly, he did not accept losing the election, and then he tried to put in a bunch. This is why he's on trial.
I'm just asking,
it's not for
if you
lying.
Believe that day, as the media presenter, we're talking about media hoaxes.
I give you my answer. It's not just that day, although that was part of the scheme. I mean, it's not like coincidence that they showed up on the very day that they were certifying the vote at the very place they were doing it to stop that from happening.
And
That's
did
not a
you
coincidence.
have any questions about why the FBI hasn't been able to find, since we started with media hoaxes, do you think it's strange that they haven't been able to find who dropped off the pipe bombs the night before? Because I think that's the strangest piece.
What pipe bombs? Oh, this is some red herring bullshit.
No, it's not. No, not red herring. This is in the news. You can watch the CNN, MSNBC. You know, remember the night before on January 5th, there were pipe bombs that were set outside of the RNC and the DNC headquarters, right? And this was a part of the whole thing. That bombs were about to go off, but they were able to, you know, get the bombs out. This is why, you know, AOC said she had to fly for all this stuff. So I'm asking you, do you have more pressing questions about why they have not been able to find the person that dropped off those pipelines?
I will have to look into that the way you'll have to look into the moon thing.
Okay.
Because
I think that's a very big piece for a lot of people of just understanding like what actually happened on that day.
As I said before, I don't trust the media on anything because they never give you the full story. So I will allow that there could be this element to the story that is part of the story. I don't think it will probably change my mind that Donald Trump would not concede an election.
Now, I was mentioning sense of reality earlier, or that's how I introduced the clip. Bill Maher is living in an alternate reality. You know, I don't understand how a guy like him can be so common sense on all the woke crap. He doesn't fall for many of the leftist psyops. He challenges the far left quite effectively, simply because in those moments he's being intellectually honest, applying basic common sense, and challenging ridiculous narratives. But every single time, the moment it goes to Donald Trump, all of that goes out the window. He goes from common sense Bill to rambling, unhinged, Trump derangement syndrome sufferer. I think the question that Candace Owens asked was perfect. You don't actually believe that, do you? He got a little bit insulting and then said that he did, that he does believe that January 6th was almost the end of American democracy.
Right, so
I don't know how somebody who's being honest, frankly, somebody with their head screwed on straight, can possibly come to that sort of conclusion. Democracy was almost lost on...
I mean, let's be real. I mean, even if this was set up by Antifa, like there was really no, besides the pipe bombs that I'm not hearing about. I didn't hear about that initially, but I feel like that was the only real threat. I feel like most of these people were, you know, elderly, senior 65. I mean, 65 plus, not senior citizens, but still 65 plus. Most of them older people. It wasn't really like a huge threat. I feel like it was more so of, you know, precautionary measures just to evacuate. To make sure no one did get hurt in the Capitol building, but I don't feel like, you know, I don't know what this guy Bill Maher is saying, the end of the world. I definitely didn't feel like the end of the world to me if they would have, you know, been successful in whatever they were doing down there. And I don't feel like this was, you know, organized by Trump to begin with, but I don't know, that's Bill Maher.
On straight can possibly come to that sort of conclusion. Democracy was almost lost on that day? Are you kidding me? Why? Because people were asking questions and protesting? If anything, that seems like the backbone, probably one of the most important structural pillars of democracy. You know, it's unfair. When conservative people practice their constitutional rights to show up, peaceably assemble, protest, and things get obviously rowdy and out of hand, I mean, obviously mob mentality was a factor. Obviously, there were some instigators in the crowd from various different factions, right, left, and Fed. You know, things obviously got out of hand, and then those images, or the imagery in general, was then used as a political cudgel. But to make the statement that American democracy was almost gone on that day, and that Trump was aiming to install himself as de facto dictator, is so ridiculous. You know, it's so detached from reality. It's almost Rachel Maddow levels of detached from reality. It's completely insane. It almost seems like, and I'm gonna quit pause, but it almost seems like this Bill guy really wanted, like you referenced in the past, people who had just accepted that they, you know, they may not have, you know, lost fair and square, but they just lost and transferred over power peacefully. And I'm like, why would, you know, this guy that knows he worked his butt off, you know, campaigning, used all of his resources, a lot of his resources, you know, in funding for, you know, the election, and then to just roll over and say, oh, they cheated me. What do you mean? No, I'm not going to roll over and say that and let them say that, you know, they cheated me and just accept it. No, I'm going to ask questions and try to challenge the fact. There's always, you know, you have to prove it. Come on, prove it. Rachel Maddow levels of detached from reality. It's completely insane. It was a protest. And then again, Bill Maher does the same thing that he always does in these instances, painting this picture of Donald Trump as if it's all about him, as if there's no merit, there was no legitimate concern. It was just Trump's ego at play. It was just Trump who didn't want to let go of the levers of power and refused, and therefore he crafted this conspiracy and this narrative that then his voters bought in 100%, and he then mobilized and weaponized his voters to overthrow the government. Yeah, that is literally not how it happened. If anything, Donald Trump was kind of behind the 8 ball on the day of. I mean, come on. Anybody acting honestly, anybody who paid attention and followed the events of the previous election knows that, let's just say, things were quite different All the rules were changed at the last second. There was a system implemented that had never been tested, never been done in American history, and frankly, in modern Western democracy history. It was an interesting night, to say the least. Let's keep it as vague as we possibly can. Bill Maher is seriously arguing that concerns or questions or investigations are unwarranted and simply spawned because the president said so, or the former president rather. Give me a break. Everybody saw it. We were paying attention. We were all concerned about the same things, the discrepancies. Electoral historical precedents pretty much thrown out the window. People had serious concerns, and Bill Maher seems incredibly ignorant in relation to certain oddities. Candace Owens mentioned one, and Bill Maher said, well, I'll have to look into it. I don't know anything about that. I never heard that story. Yeah, that's kind of the problem. You're casting judgment on a whole group of people for having opinions based on their analysis of the night, but you don't know the facts. You don't know the story, because Bill Maher has his TDS blinders on. He views everything from Donald Trump, and Donald Trump as the nucleus, his perceived image of Donald Trump. All of his opinions are downstream from that individual point. In a way, it's kind of dehumanizing to actual Trump voters, because he's saying that you're a cult member who's being manipulated by the former president and just doing his bidding as he attempts to install himself as a dictator. No, Trump voters are free thinkers, critical thinkers, and they have major concerns and major issues, and that was the entire point of January 6th. That's the point of the activism, that's the point of the rhetoric, to get answers which 3 years later we still don't have. And answers to legitimate questions. Bill Maher doesn't even know the questions because Bill Maher's point of view is built from his personal vendetta against Donald Trump and, I don't know, probably just reading the New York Times and hardly anything else. He just goes over and over again to the same default talking points, cutting over Candace Owens the moment Trump is involved. He gets emotional, he gets angry, he starts to rant. All logic, but most importantly, his openness to different ideas and truly understanding where other people come from. The moment Donald Trump is involved, he seems uninterested because he's already formulated his opinions. He's already sure in his own mind that Donald Trump is guilty and that Donald Trump is going to prison for supposedly committing these crimes that the New York Times told him Donald Trump committed. You know, the implication is that no matter what happened, if Donald Trump lost the election that night, that he was going to act the way that he did, regardless of circumstance. But of course, that isn't the case. If it was traceable paper ballots, in-person voting, Trump would have absolutely conceded. But it wasn't. I feel like that's pretty key information that we probably shouldn't omit from the conversation here as we attempt to pit everything on Donald Trump and pretend as if there's no serious concern or legitimate concern, no justifiable concern. I simply cannot buy into that narrative because, you know, I was paying attention on election night 2020. I'm not as emotionally anti-Trump. I don't have a personal vendetta against Donald Trump, and so it's kind of easy to see where people are coming from rather than being willfully blind and disregarding people's concerns while labeling them as simple cult followers.
Yo, there we have it, coming straight from Liberal Hive Mind. Yo, big shouts to Liberal Hive Mind. Definitely go show them some love. Yo, Bill Maher seems very lost. I'm not sure where this sense of lostness has come from, but he has no real recollection of what was going on around the time of the 2016 election, or not the 2016, but the 2020 election. This didn't come out of nowhere. Trump's response was warranted. You know, he didn't just start, acting and asking questions out of nowhere. This was all justifiable because he suspected there was, something fishy going on. Definitely some type of shenanigans. As far as, the mail-in and not being in person. I mean, like, come on now. This is the first time we've seen this ever. So, and there were so many, there had to be some questions asked. I mean, and if they could have, proved and had some, trace back to it, this may not have happened. I mean, and I don't feel like, the J6 protesters initially were, trying to cause any harm. They were literally just protesting at the Capitol. I think they were influenced, by a couple bad apples in the crowd to get in there and, try to do stuff. And I don't even think they got in there and they did anything. I think they got in there and did like a self-independent tour. Most of them went in there just toured around the Capitol. But for those who were influencers, they were in there trying to make it look bad for the media. They seen the cameras. They were doing stuff in front of the cameras, to make it look worse than what it was. This guy, Bill Maher, has totally bought into what mainstream media, liberal left mainstream media has, sold him. And I don't think there's any getting him back. You guys gotta let me know your thoughts on the whole situation in the comment section below. I don't feel like Candace Owens even had to own him here. I was kind of sad to see that because I was excited to see, Candace Owens get in there and, really pick at him. But she didn't even have to really do anything. She just kind of like triggered him and he went from there. He ran it and ran it. She barely even got a word in. And after anytime she said a word imposing him, I feel like he just, ran it for another 2-3 minutes. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Bill Maher needs to snap out of it, come back to reality, so we can actually have a real conversation where he's hearing and we're talking back. Because I feel like he's just talking at her head at this point. You guys, let me know your thoughts, like I said, in the comment section down below. Also, make sure you guys hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, guys. We're on the road to the truth. Hop aboard for the journey. I'll catch you guys on the next week.